Hello human beings, PowerGamer here. If you're looking for a fun hobby, you might suggest reading reviews of random products you find on Amazon. I mean, there is some absolute gold in these things. Sometimes you get people trying to justify their weird purchase, other times you get some of the funniest negative experiences out there, like this cow chew toy I found that reads, "My dog tore this thing apart faster than you could say Moo Moo Meadows." You know, suddenly I'm hit with inspiration.
Mario Kart Wii, what do you give Grandpa when he loses his driver's license? One of the most successful games in the series, and that's saying a lot, because while the previous Mario Kart games did well, even great in DS's case, Wii was the one that really cemented the series as Nintendo's biggest moneymaker within their biggest moneymaker, since pretty much everyone had this game, unless your name rhymes with Potato. Yeah, I didn't actually own this one as a kid, but I was more than aware of its existence, which shows just how much of a big deal it was. Like older games in the series, Hideki Kono and Shigeru Miyamoto acted as producers, and directing duties this time were handed to Yasuyuki Oyagi. Development began shortly after the release of Mario Kart DS, and the developers wanted to include some of the features that were planned for that game, but they had to cut for time. They also decided to include bikes in the game for the first time, which Kono had actually been pitching since Double Dash due to his love for extreme sports. Though back then it was rejected because apparently some of the other developers thought Mario riding a bike was weird. Trust me, he has done far stranger stuff in the past and future. Because of this, the game was mainly known as Mario Kart X during development, but then they decided to just give up like they did with DS with the subtitle. Because the game was being developed for the Wii, they decided to utilize the console's motion controls, and to better complement this, they created the Wii Wheel, which would come bundled in with the game. They actually went through over 30 different prototypes for this thing. Yeah, they literally tried to reinvent the wheel. I can't tell if that's impressive or stupid. And apparently the team actually had the voice actors play the game while recording their lives, which I bring up for no other reason other than I find that fun. The game was unveiled at E3 2007, where most of its features were shown off by good old Reggie Fils-Aimé, and additional details were revealed at a press conference held by Nintendo in the fall of that year. Mario Kart Wii was released on April 10th, 2008 in Japan, with Europe, Australia, and North America getting it on the 11th, 24th, and 27th, respectively, the exact opposite order that each place got Mario Kart DS. I wonder if that was some kind of apology. The game was a monster hit, managing to sell over 37 million copies, making it by far the best-selling game in the series at that point, and the second best-selling Wii game of all time. And first place was Wii Sports, you know, the game that came bundled with the frickin' console. While reception was good, it was a bit lower than DS, since a lot of people felt that some of the game's new additions were really gimmicky, and the game could feel really unbalanced. But like every other Mario Kart game, fondness for it would only continue to grow with time, so if you talk to someone who grew up with it, they'll say it's one of their favorites in the series. And this one has even more of that love, since it was a lot of people's first exposure to the series, especially people from my generation.
Well, that is, except for me personally. Yeah, this is another major Wii game that I didn't actually own during the console's heyday, though unlike Mario Galaxy or Super Smash Bros. Brawl, I actually have a reason for this. My brother had Mario Kart DS, so we would just play that instead. I did play this game every once in a while at a friend's houses, and even in a coding camp I did one summer, but I always liked Mario Kart DS better, and then I got Mario Kart 7 when I got my 3DS, so never really felt the need to own this until a few years ago. So while I have played quite a bit of this game, I haven't gone through and seen everything it has to offer. Almost everyone in my generation says that this is the best Mario Kart game ever made, though, so do I agree with that sentiment? Well, hopefully I can find my answer within the next 20 minutes.
So the game boots up, and while we're initially taken to a title screen, if you wait long enough, you get this fun little intro. We start with Mario and Luigi just driving with Wii wheels, but then it transitions into the actual races. Fun. After that, you select a profile represented by your Mii, which is a nice idea, since this way, if you want to unlock everything again, you don't have to reset your progress, you can just make a new one. After selecting the Grand Prix, we see that this game is by far the most expansive character roster in the series up to this point. Starting out, we have all the major staples like Mario, Luigi, Peach, Toad, Yoshi, Donkey Kong, Bowser, Wario, and Waluigi, plus Koopa Troopa and Baby Mario are back, and we even have the addition of Baby Peach, who actually was a thing in Yoshi's Island DS. But for the characters you can unlock later, we have the returning Daisy, Diddy Kong, Bowser Jr., King Boo, Dry Bones, Toadette, and Birdo, and the only new characters added are Rosalina, Funky Kong, Baby Daisy, and Dry Bowser. So overall, we get a pretty solid character lineup. There's some less interesting characters, but also some pretty cool new ones. But now we can finally start a race. And, did the game always look this rough? Yeah, the graphics for this game are honestly not that good. I mean, I wouldn't say they're bad, but there are some pretty noticeable issues. Honestly, the character models are about on par with Double Dash, if not slightly worse, since a lot of them look pretty jagged. But the main issue is that everything has this kind of blurry, washed out filter on it, and it's just not very appealing to look at. Even the pretty tracks just look much worse than they should, which is really disappointing. I know the Wii was underpowered for the time, but even then it can still make some amazing looking stuff like Mario Galaxy or Skyward Sword. This game honestly looks worse than Super Smash Bros. Brawl to me, and at least that game had a reason to look the way it did. Now, thankfully, the soundtrack for this game is fantastic. This gave us some of the most iconic songs in the Mario Kart series. If you don't know how Mario Kart works by this point, you've either been living under a rock or you're the same age I was when this game came out. Loop around the track, item boxes, go fast to win, get trophy every 4 races. This game doesn't reinvent the formula, but it does have arguably the biggest change in the entire series, the addition of motion controls. Like I said earlier, Mario Kart Wii came bundled with the Wii Wheel. Pop the Wii remote in and you're ready for action. Just don't do this on your driving test, since it will not help you. help you. Yeah, all this thing really is a plastic shell for the Wii Remote that's not even required. You can just hold the Wii Remote on its side and it's basically the same thing. This is just a way to add slightly more immersion and inspire a bunch of other companies to get people to waste money on plastic junk. But how does using this thing actually work? Well, the controls are pretty simple. Use the 1 and 2 buttons to go forward and backward, use items with the D-pad, drift with the B button, which has this enlargement, so that's nice, and you steer by tilting the Wii Remote left and right.
Now, some people would argue that this is the ideal way to play Mario Kart Wii, but you could scour the list of those people for hundreds, if not thousands of seconds, and you will certainly not find my name on there.
Yeah, I've never really been a fan of this game's motion controls, even as a kid. I mean, they're not awful, they do the job fine enough, and I'm sure you can get pretty good with them, but since this is such an unconventional control scheme, I just never really got used to it. Hell, sometimes when I was young, I would honestly forget that was even how it worked. I would push on the D-pad and wonder why I wasn't doing anything, which is not great when you're a 10-year-old hanging out with some family friends that are younger than you and they're kicking your butt. So yeah, don't really think this is a great addition, at least for me personally. I can't use them, but personally, I just go for the more traditional setup, and thankfully this game does give you multiple options for how you control it. Personally, I prefer the Wii Remote and nunchuck combo, but most people seem to use the GameCube or Classic controller. See, these are some pretty nice options, but I'm not really a big fan of them here. Not only do I just like the Wii Remote and nunchuck, but this game also added a pretty big new feature in the form of the trick system. If you go in the air and shake the Wii Remote, your character will do a trick, which will give them a small speed boost when they hit the ground. This is an awesome addition that makes ramps and jumps way more fun than they were in the previous games. Some tracks even work this method much more into their course design, which is great. But if you're using a GameCube or Classic controller, you have to hit the D-pad, which just feels insanely awkward. I have no idea why they chose this over something a bit simpler. But that's not the only thing the shake/pad is used for. As I said 5 minutes ago, when choosing a cart, you now have the option to pick a bike instead. The bikes have varying stats than the carts, but the main difference is that one is better for turning, while the other is better for straighting. Carts get an extra boost while drifting, and some of the bikes just have much heavier drifting, making them really obnoxious, but if you're on a bike, you can shake or hit up to do a wheelie, which limits your steering, but makes you move faster. Yeah, this is clearly the better option, so bikes outclass carts in 95% of all tracks in the game. But calling the game Mario Bikes just has a much less snappy ring to it. Also, which ones you use are locked to a specific difficulty. Starting out, you can only use carts on 50cc and bikes on 100cc, and you have to unlock the ability to use both. The 150cc lets you use both right from the start. Also, the game lets you choose between manual or automatic drifting, where it will drift as soon as you start turning. Don't choose this, it's not actually helpful.
But it wouldn't be a Mario Kart game without items, and this is where Mario Kart Wii starts to get weird.
All the items from Mario Kart DS are back, and they work exactly the same, though the fake item box is back to being bright red for some reason. We have 3 new items this time, and each of them suck. Seriously, none of these things are fun to use. They're either underwhelming or actively infuriating. First up is the Mega Mushroom, which makes you grow big. You're invincible and move faster, much like the star, but this only lasts for like 5 seconds, so it is helpful, but more often than not, it's just kind of a letdown. Then we have the POW block, which is like a less effective lightning. It causes a POW block to appear above everyone in front of you, and after a few seconds, it will cause them to spin out and lose their items. It's definitely annoying when it happens to you, but only because you lose your item. The spin out doesn't slow you down that much, so when you use it, it doesn't feel very helpful, and it only hits the people in front of you as opposed to the lightning, which hits everyone. Plus, it doesn't affect you if you're in the air when it goes off, and apparently shaking the Wii Remote at the right time lets you avoid it, but I have tried that so many times, and not once have I ever been able to pull it off, so I have no idea how that actually works. And finally, we have the Thundercloud, which takes the record for the absolute worst item in Mario Kart history, because it's the only one that actually hurts you. How it works is it gives you small speed boosts as long as it's above you, but after about 10 seconds, it'll zap you and shrink you down. What you want to do is bump into another player to pass the cloud onto them before it zaps you, which I admit can be satisfying to do. But if there's no one around you, you're just screwed. The other player can bump into you again immediately, which makes it pointless, and on top of that, it's just not worth it since I want something that's actually helpful. Yeah, this thing sucks, and I know that was intentional just by the sound that plays when you get it. None of the items introduced in this game ever came back in the future, and I am completely okay with that because I don't like any of these. But if you're wondering how that makes the game weird, well, let's talk more about the item balancing in this game. It is absolutely out of control. This is easily the most hectic, unbalanced, and downright infuriating game in the series in terms of getting hit by stuff. If you thought 64 and Double Dash's item balance were insane, they have got nothing on Wii. This game will just spam overpowered stuff constantly, and there's nothing you can do about it. POW blocks show up over and over again, causing you to lose items. Lightning will happen repeatedly when previous games would only have 2 per race max. People will get bullet bills as soon as the race starts when everyone is still close to each other, and the blue shell. Sweet mother of Christ, the blue shell. This game absolutely worships this spiny little thing. It will hand it off to players like candy, and there's basically no way to avoid them without extreme luck. I seriously once had a race where I got hit by not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 freaking blue shells. It was one of the most ridiculous things I had ever seen in my life, especially since 2 of them happened in tandem with the lightning, because that's another thing this game loves to do.
This game seriously has the most absurd item balancing in any racing game I have ever played. It is pure, unfiltered chaos, which is aggravating. but it's also pretty fun.
Much like a lot of the previous games, the crazy item stuff can make things pretty interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, it can be one of the most infuriating things ever to just get absolutely pummeled with items over and over again, or hit by a blue shell or lightning at the worst possible time. But it can also be fun seeing the same fate come to all your opponents. Being locked in second or third place only to hear a blue shell come flying past you is one of the most delightfully sadistic things you can possibly get from a video game, and Mario Kart Wii provides that feeling tenfold. There are so many races that I won purely because my opponent got screwed over, and I'm completely okay with that. Honestly, this ended up being the easiest game in the series to get first place in all the cups so far. The main reason for that being there's a lot more variability in terms of where your opponents are placed. Previous Mario Kart games almost always had the smarter CPUs finish in the same places roughly every time. Very rarely would your main rival slip into third or fourth place, so you didn't have that much wiggle room. If you got fourth or fifth place even one time, you were pretty much screwed. But here, since the items are going crazy all the time, you'll very rarely have a computer player take first place more than once. I literally once got first place in the first 3 races, but then got 6th place in the last one. In any of the older Mario Kart games, that would be a death sentence, but here I still managed to win the cup. On top of that, the number of racers is increased from 8 to 12, which adds even more variability and chaos. But now let's actually talk about the tracks. Much like DS, we have 32 total, 16 new and 16 old, though only half of the cups are available at the start of the game. The Mushroom Cup opens with Luigi Circuit. It's a pretty standard starter course, with the only thing of note being this part with a bunch of boost panels, and this is the theme we've already used for a starter course twice, so Moo Moo Meadows is the spiritual sequel to Moo Moo Farm from Mario Kart 64, and this one is better since it actually has cows, though I think people mainly remember this track from the version in later games. Mushroom Gorge, not to be confused with Mushroom Grove from Skylanders, is a pretty cool one. You jump on all these bouncy mushrooms and have this part where you pick between 2 paths. It's really fun. And finally, Toad's Factory, which is supposed to be the factory where item boxes are made. It's a really cool concept with all these conveyor belts moving you along and seeing these boxes get stomped, though this part at the end with the mud is pretty annoying, and I swear I always bump into this wall. The Flower Cup gives us Mario Circuit. It feels insanely tight because of how narrow it gets, and it has a chain chomp, like the one from Double Dash, which makes the track feel even more generic than it should. But thankfully, up next is Coconut Mall, which is easily the best track in the game. It's hard to find someone who doesn't love this place, since it's such a weird but fun concept of literally driving through a shopping mall. You go up the escalators and have to quickly figure out which one is going up or down, since that drastically alters your speed. You can do tricks off of the fountain, and even dodge cars in the parking lot. Plus, the music is iconic as hell. This track is awesome. DK Summit is basically a fusion of the DK tracks from the 2 previous games. You blast up to the top of the ski mountain and have to go back down. It's not as fun as DK Mountain, but you can still do some fun tricks in this half pipe while avoiding Shy Guys, so it's decent enough. Though for some reason it's called DK Snowboard Cross in Europe, and I have no idea why. And finally, Wario's Gold Mine, which is a surprisingly difficult track for the Flower Cup. You go through a mine with some pretty narrow tracks, and these minecarts can easily knock you off or bump into you. It can be fun, but also pretty frustrating. The Star Cup has Daisy Circuit, which is just a simple pier with these pretty looking sunsets, so it's decent. And it has the statue of Luigi and Daisy dancing. Always knew they had something going on. Koopa Cape is a really good one. You start out on a basic mountain, but then you go down this flowing stream and then underwater in this large glass tube. This is the first time you really get to go underwater in Mario Kart, and it is easily one of the standouts of the game. Maple Treeway is another highlight. It has this gorgeous fall aesthetic to it, and has you driving through all these trees, which is so much fun. You can even find power-ups hidden in these leaf piles. And Grumble Volcano is, it's not an awful track, but it just feels like a generic lava level and not much else. The most interesting thing about it is that some parts will crumble as the race goes on, giving you less room. Yeah, this is the first game to have courses that change between laps, so that's neat, but that's all this track really has going for it. Finally, we have the Special Cup, and all 4 of these tracks are concepts we've seen in other games, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Dry Ruins is the obligatory desert course, but this is one of the better ones since you actually go inside this temple that fills up with sand as the race goes on, which makes it pretty fun. Moonview Highway might be my favorite highway track in the series, since dodging the cars is fun, but it never gets too narrow. You can grab these fun speed boosts and even drive on the wall at some points, which feels like a cool precursor to later games. Next, of course, is Bowser's Castle, which is great. It opens with this twisty hallway, you've got a Bowser statue shooting fireballs like the one from Double Dash, and it ends with you dodging these lava pillars. And as is tradition, we finish with Rainbow Road, which is really solid. You've got some speed boosts, fun turns, and even some trick opportunities, which makes it a great way to end things off, kinda. And if you fall off, your character will actually burn up like you're re-entering the atmosphere, which is a great little detail.
Mario Kart Wii has an overall fantastic selection of courses. There's maybe 1 or 2 that aren't great, but the vast majority of them are a ton of fun.
As for the retro courses, they work a bit differently from before, since it isn't just 4 per game now. This time we have more variety. And since we're on a console now, they're able to use actually interesting ones from the N64 and GameCube, though the SNES and GBA courses look kinda weird since they just look like basic 3D versions of the flat sprites and not much else. The Shell Cup has Peach Beach from Double Dash, Yoshi Falls from DS, Ghosty Valley 2 from Super, and Mario Raceway from 64. Peach Beach is kept mainly intact, Yoshi Falls is still pretty lame, Ghost Valley 2 is okay, and actually keeps the feather shortcut, so that's neat, and Mario Raceway is alright, but nothing too special. The Banana Cup has Sherbet Land from 64, Shy Guy Beach from Super Circuit, Delfino Square from DS, and Waluigi Stadium from Double Dash. Sherbet Land was really annoying originally, and here it isn't as bad since the controls are much better, but still, it's not great. Shy Guy Beach isn't awful, but it looks really washed out and the water slowing you down isn't really fun or interesting, but Delfino Square is even even better than before since you can now trick off of the drawbridge when it's up, which is fun, and the same principle applies to so many parts of Waluigi Stadium. Plus, since the physics are less bouncy, it can be less hectic in case you thought the original was too much. The Leaf Cup contains Desert Hills from DS, Bowser Castle 3 from Super Circuit, DK's Jungle Parkway from 64, and Mario Circuit from Double Dash. This is probably the weakest cup in the game. Desert Hills is a pretty lame choice to bring back since it's just a generic desert course and not much else when we already had a much better desert course given to us in this game. Bowser Castle 3 is alright since this part with all the jumps can be fun to trick off of. DK's Jungle Parkway is fine, but you can't drift up this ledge at the end, which was the best part of the original track. And Mario Circuit feels nearly identical to Wii's Mario Circuit, so what was the point of bringing us back? And finally, the Lightning Cup consists of Mario Circuit 3 from Super, Peach Gardens from DS, DK Mountain from Double Dash, and Bowser's Castle from 64. Mario Circuit 3 is an okay enough update, but why the hell is this in the Lightning Cup? It is way too basic for the last track of the game. Peach Gardens is just as good as it was last time, DK Mountain is still a blast, pun, though unlike Waluigi Stadium, the game being less bouncy makes it a little less enjoyable since I feel like this one had a much better balance originally, and Bowser's Castle is still pretty solid. Overall, the retro courses are much better than the ones in DS. There's a handful of duds, but most of them are pretty solid choices to bring back.
But once you finish all the cups, you get this little postcard of your Mii standing next to Mario and Peach, which can then be sent to the Wii message board, and this allows you to actually play as your Mii in the races, which is a really fun addition. But enough about all of that stuff, now it's time to get into the multiplayer.
Well, as you'd expect, it's a ton of fun. The crazy item balance makes this an absolute dream for multiplayer, since you genuinely have no idea what's gonna happen. Combine that with a mostly fantastic selection of courses, and you've got yourself a great multiplayer experience with friends and family, or even total strangers, because much like Mario Kart DS, we offered online multiplayer that has since been shut down, but people have actually set up their own servers and even made custom tracks for them. Now sadly, I am way too trivial to actually set this kind of stuff up for myself, so I can't really talk about it, but from what I've heard, this was one of the best multiplayer experiences on the Wii, since it was one of the very few examples of something that actually functioned properly. But multiplayer isn't just about the racing, we've also got the battle mode to try out, and this game was certainly the beginning of the end. Yeah, everyone gushes about the battle modes in the older Mario Kart games, but from Wii onward, that wasn't really the case. And playing it is pretty easy to figure out why. We've got two modes, Balloon Battle, which works like it did in most of the older games, and Coin Runners, where you just collect as many coins as possible, which aren't bad concepts. But the problem is that they cater more towards online multiplayer, so you have to play in teams with computer players turned on, and every match is locked to a time limit. Which is fine for online stuff, I guess, but for local multiplayer, that just makes the game way less interesting. So this mode isn't bad, but it is nowhere near as fun as it was in the older Mario Kart games. But at least the stages are decent enough. We've got 10 total, 5 new and 5 old. For new ones, we have Block Plaza, which isn't as strong as the older block stages, but it's still good. Delfino Pier, which is a nice aesthetic, though playing on it can be a little too spacious. Funky Stadium, which is easily the best one, since you start out going off of these ramps, and this type of map is perfect for battle mode. Ching Chomp Wheel, which is a fun idea, being a giant roulette wheel, though it's just a circle, so it can feel a little basic. And Thwomp Desert, which is another big circle, only much more generic, so meh. For old ones, there's one from each of the previous games. Battle Course 4 from Super, Skyscraper from 64, Battle Course 3 from Super Circuit, Cookie Land from Double Dash, and Twilight House from DS. Honestly, don't have much to say about these. The ones from the 2D games are whatever, and even the 3D ones are decent, but not great. Now that that's taken care of, it's 150cc time, baby. The Mushroom Cup had some trouble in Mushroom Gourds, but after that I got through fine enough, though I lost Toad's Factory thanks to this stupid box. The Flower Cup I cleared on my first try without any issues. The Star Cup went perfectly until Grumble Volcano, but I thankfully still won. The Special Cup went way smoother than any other Special Cup I've done for a Mario Kart game. The Shell Cup was a piece of cake. The Banana Cup had some crazy moments, but I still came out on top. The Leaf Cup I got royally screwed over on Bowser Castle 3, but thankfully the second run through had no issues. And the Lightning Cup was filled with close calls, but I still managed to win the whole thing on my first try.
Though, remember how I said this was the easiest game to get all the first place trophies in so far? Yeah, there's a bit of a catch to that, because they drastically changed how some of the unlockables work.
All the older Mario Kart games had unlockables tied to just winning the races, aside from the extra courses in Super Circuit. Here that's mostly the case, but there are a couple exceptions. Some of the characters and vehicles are tied to the time trials, which I never really talked about before since there wasn't that much to say about it. Basically, you just drive around the track to go for your best time with no opponents, and the only items you get are 3 mushrooms. There's a ghost you have to go up against, which represents the default goal time, but if you beat it by a decent amount of seconds, you unlock the fast ghost, which I swear is genuinely impossible to beat since this thing will play the course absolutely perfectly. Now thankfully you don't have to beat these in order to unlock anything, which I really wish I realized before wasting like an hour trying to beat one. Instead, you just have to unlock them, but most of the later variations are just new vehicles, so I did the bare minimum and only unlocked the characters. Playing the time trial on each course gives you Toadette and Birdo, and unlocking 4 to 8 fast ghosts gives you Funky Kong and Baby Luigi. Why is Baby Luigi harder to unlock than Funky Kong? That makes no sense. One is a baby version as a stable character, whereas the other is a brand new character that has arguably the best stats in the game. But the last 3, possibly 4 characters are when things get really annoying. One feature of the Mario Kart series I've completely completely neglected to talk about up to this game is the star ranking you get when you finish a cup, because up until this point, it was completely superfluous. The most it did was unlock an alternate title screen and Super Circuit, but here it's tied to unlocking some of the characters. Now, how it works is you're given a rank based on how well you do in each race, which is mainly tied to what place you get, but if you make a mistake, like falling off the track or bumping into an obstacle, it can decrease your rank, which the game says nothing about. And you have no idea how well you're doing until you finish the cup. So you can seriously get first place in all 4 races and still end up with an A rank or lower, which is absolutely ridiculous, since in order to unlock the last 3 or 4 characters, you have to get at least 1 star on half of the cups in each difficulty. Getting in on all the Nitro Cups on 50cc unlocks Baby Daisy, the Retro Cups on 100cc unlocks Bowser Jr., and the Nitro Cups on 150cc unlocks Dry Bowser. This was easily the most annoying part of the game for me, since I ended up having to replay a bunch of cups that I already cleared, only this time I didn't just have to win, I had to basically play perfectly. Now, thankfully this wasn't hard on the earlier cups, but 150cc was a giant pain in the butt, and it really wasn't worth it if you ask me. Now, I kept saying 3 or 4, because if you get a star on all of the Nitro Cups in Mirror Mode, you unlock Rosalina, but if you have a Mario Galaxy save file on your system, you only need to play 50 races, which is interesting and saved me quite a bit of time. Oh yeah, once again, beating 150cc unlocks Mirror Mode, and genuine question, does anyone actually like this? I've never seen anyone willingly choose to play Mirror Mode. Even with friends who want things to be as tough as possible, no one actually picks it. The only time I've ever heard anyone talk about this stuff is how Toad's Turnpike on the N64 has the cars go backwards. Aside from that, this mode is completely superfluous and just pads out the game every single time. I never actually look forward to this stuff, I only do it because I have to, but whatever, let's get this over with. Done, 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 done. And there's my new title screen.
Is honestly pretty lopsided, the visuals are underwhelming, the new power-ups are lame, the battle mode is completely whatever, and the motion controls are nowhere near as exciting as they were in 2008. But the track selection is fantastic, especially the new ones, and the item balance can be as much of a pain as it is hilarious. I definitely see why this game got kind of mixed reviews when it came out, but I can also see why so many people remember it fondly. While it's not my favorite game in the series, I can still have a really good time with it. Be forewarned though, if you ever want to use the Wii Wheel on a different game, make sure you check the box to see if it's Wii Wheel compatible, because otherwise something really bad could happen to you.